All right, welcome CS10 to DOM 2. Of course, we're going to review DOM 1, and I want to answer any questions we had. And I was totally pleasantly surprised what happened with yesterday. So yesterday was basically create your own adventure kind of thing. There's no right way to manipulate the DOM, by the way. Like, there's not a perfect way. Consistency across your team, that's a perfect way. But I wanted to show you like one way to do it. And I showed you a bunch of things yesterday. And I found some examples in pull requests that I thought were amazing. And I thought that did a great job of doing exactly what I asked for, and some that did a great job of doing nothing that I asked for and still getting the same result. So I want to start with Amy. I've already talked to these people and asked if I could embarrass them a little bit. But Amy did an amazing job of doing exactly what I wanted. So Amy came in here. If we look at our code, notice how she just went straight at it. There's no fluff, no refactoring. It's just like, yo, I'm using get element by tag name. I'm going to grab the A tag, and I'm going to tell it what to do. Like, this is just straight up, no nonsense DOM manipulation. And that was kind of what I was aiming for. I didn't want you guys to have to like worry about for loops. I didn't want you guys to have to worry about like other properties we hadn't seen. I wanted you just to be familiar with getting things and selecting things on the DOM and updating those things. Like, that was the whole point of yesterday. And so Amy just killed it in that way. She came in here and she just went right to the array. And look at this. She used get elements by tag name for every one. And I actually appreciate this because it really showcases that you don't need more than one solid piece of knowledge to be very dangerous to get all your DOM manipulation. So, and down here, you know, she went through and changed the colors with a query selector all. But up until then, I mean, this was just like super straightforward. And I can see what Amy did. She wanted to get through the objectives because then she wanted to stretch a little. So if you look down here, she started to stretch quite a bit. And I think this is a good way to approach your assignment. You know, try to knock out the assignment as fast as you can and try to get to the stretch if you can. And so in this case, Amy came up here and she put some little Easter eggs in here. So you'll notice in the menu we have a bobcat and a tomcat. Well, if you hover over them, she put some event listeners in here. And notice that she changed not only an image, but she said cats are awesome. No, really, right? So she changed the button content on hover. And then, of course, if we have our bobcat, cats are awesome. No, really. So I thought that was really fun of Amy to do. And I thought I wanted to show everybody to say, look, it didn't need to be that difficult. You just had to go and reference your element name, and you were good to go. Like, difficulty was not, I don't like to see difficulty sometimes because abstracting too much can be very confusing for the next developer. So if I was a developer reading this, I could go, oh, I know exactly what this developer was doing. They were getting the navigation in the 0th position. You know what I mean? Like, it's so easy to read this code. All right, so I wanted to start with this as a great example of what I was looking for, and I'll probably just steal this as solution, Amy, so good job. But I want to also put in some other things from other people. And by the way, all of you did a great job. Like, I was reading all of your Git requests or pull requests yesterday night. I was just like floored with how good all of you have done. So I'm just like instructor proud right now. And I feel like I didn't even do it. Like, I feel like you guys did it on your own. So if we come in here, Cass Lamandola, Cass did a really interesting thing down here. So Cass, what she did, and I know that she worked with some other people, so shout out to everybody that worked with Cass. But if you look at this, she organized all of her selectors at the top of the page. And you'll notice that she was using query selector all. So this is completely different from Amy, like 100% different. Amy was using the tags and using the indices. Cass was going right at it with query selector and then using the actual selector items with classes and IDs. So like, this is the same result, but totally different implementation. And I wanted to point this out to you and say, look how cool this could be. So if we look at this, Cass used the nav and the indice position and just changed the inner HTML to be right, just directly right into the site content data. Then if you go down here, it gets a little more interesting. So down here, we could actually say features. So she's got her features right up here, wherever she's grabbing it right there. And she's grabbing the top content in the 0th position, which is pretty cool. So it's the top content. And then she's saying first element child. So first element child allows you to grab literally the first element child given the indice. So that's pretty cool. So she went up here, grabbed the indice of the top content in 0th position, and she called it features. And then she used the first element child, and then she assigned her data. Isn't that cool? So if you look at Amy's, we come down here, and Amy just went right to it. Document, get element by tag name. I know that my first H4 in the 0th position is going to be features, so I'm just going to assign it. And then she consequently went down to the rest of the H4s. Now, what is definitely something that could be bad about this, being so explicit like this? What could be a downfall of this kind of approach? Exactly, H4 could change. There could be a new H4 introduced, right? So if you introduce a new H4, the indice just gets jacked up. So yeah, understand that as much as I love this solution, it does have some downfalls because it's so hard-coded. But at the same time, it's totally valid. If we come down here, we have a similar thing where we can actually say features, top content. Now, I gotta just be straight with you. You will never have something like this to this extent. Like I went crazy here to try to get you as much practice with DOM manipulation. The real world is actually a lot less than this. So you actually went above and beyond the real world as far as DOM manipulation today or yesterday night, because nobody gives you a JSON object and says, go create a web page. Usually it's a back-end piece. You have some front end that we're going to talk, you're going to actually introduce yourselves to with React. You'll loop through some data and create elements. But this is a great example on how we can do these things. So also I wanted to look down here and talk about the for each that Cass used to color her navigation green. So you'll notice that, remember that if we have nav, if we come back and look at how nav was selected, Cass used query selector all. What does query selector all return? What type of DOM object does it return? A node list. Well, Cass, you can't answer. So Nando says an array-like object. It's true, but it's not an HTML collection. It's a node list. And there's a big difference there because the node list has access to different methods. So in this case, the for each method was used in the node list, and so she could actually access it without doing anything crazy. And in this case, she just said item. She used her arrow function, item.styleColor green. So basically, this loops through each item inside of this array, this node list to be specific, and provides green. Pretty cool. Okay. Then we get to Matthias. So Matthias totally took a left when everybody went right. And so in this case, I thought it was really cool to see. You could see that he was really challenging himself to try to use a loop and not have to worry about statically assigning things. So check this out. In Matthias's navigation, he set up his nav items. He set up keys and values. Now remember these methods? I mean, this is crazy. So last week we talked about the keys method and the values method on an object. And so he went in and separated the keys and values. And he said, look, I know, and I did this on purpose, I put image source in here so it wouldn't be easy, right? And so I'm sorry for that, but I did. I also I accidentally did not put about in there. That was just my bad. But this thing was meant to be like, you have to think harder about this. And so guess what he did? He put if keys in the I position is not equal to image source, then do this. And so this is so cool because this allows him to not have to worry about image-source messing up his array. And then once he had his array, he went through and put his values and keys in. And I thought that was a really cool solution. I really wanted to show that off. As we come down here, you'll see that a lot more of those things occurred. So once you've got that pattern down once, you can see that Matthias is using it again. And I just thought this was really cool. Notice that he's using an includes. So in this case, he's actually saying object keys. So he's using my actual object up here. So up here, he's using this object, looping through the keys and grabbing these pieces. So he's getting he's using his DOM manipulation, and then he's getting his content by going through. And I could tell that he was just challenging himself here just to figure out how he could do it, because he's using a filter, and then he's filtering all the items, and then he's looking for an H4. I do not recommend this, by the way. This is just Matthias being awesome and trying to push himself. Again, look at the stark differences between Amy, straightforward. Like, I really love this approach. I love this approach for future developers. I really do. It's just, you know exactly what you're doing. Cass is a little more dynamic because we have our elements and our children that we're working with. Then Matthias went just straight crazy with for loops and tons of object manipulation methods. I just thought all three did a great job, and then every one of you were in between the spectrum here, from very simple to a very extreme. I just wanted to like applaud you all. I was totally impressed. I was talking to all the instructors being like, wow, these guys ran with this. So anyway, cool moment. Very impressed and just floored with how good all of you did. So any questions about yesterday's project? Is there anything that you can answer or make clear about that? Oh yeah, and I saw Aaron did a lot of the stuff too with Matthias. I saw that in the pull request, so shout out to Aaron. Just want to make sure I don't skip anything. Okay, Tremaine says, I had one sort of related question. Does DOM manipulation compile to the CSS file when you use the less compiler? No. So remember, the less compiler just outputs CSS, so don't ever think they're related. Great question, but they're not related. And remember, when we're using DOM manipulation with style, what are we actually doing? Can anybody remember from yesterday? So when we say dot style, what's actually happening on the HTML level? Inline styles. Great job, Nando. Michael says, can we use DOM manipulation to inject things into websites to test changes? You can through the console. You can actually, yeah. Just inspect element and start using your DOM manipulation. So David said, we struggled a little with append child and prepend. Do you want to throw let on them? So let's see. I think Cass did a really good job here. Here it is. So one of the gotchas was you had to be able to create an element without HTML. And that, I actually felt bad about this later because I was like, we didn't really talk about create element very much. I wanted you to definitely Google your way through some of these things like prepend and append. But the trick here to get prepend and append working is you had to have something to append to it. And so I take ownership of that one. I should have told you about create element instead of just throwing you into the deep end. But I think the deep end's kind of fun once in a while. But understand that when we're creating an element through JavaScript, there's certain ways that we can do that. So let's go look at that really quick. And don't worry, today is not a 2-hour session. Like I'm able to spend time on this and we're still fine. So you'll notice here that we can actually create an element using the document object. And it's basically a string that specifies the type of element to be created. And so you can actually put in a bunch of different elements and it'll return. So you can create a div and all this stuff. Now, I really don't recommend doing this outside of knowing that you can do it. Like you really should be controlling your HTML with just your HTML. But I would recommend that you understand why this works, because In React, you'll be adding elements and stuff all the time. Okay. Cass says, also, indices and child nodes is super strange. Notice how index 11 is actually the 6th nav item. Maybe you can shed some light on that. So the problem with that is white space. So white space introduces more child nodes. So remember how that DOM visualization thing, and then we looked at that. What was that link? DOM visualizer. So I think it has something to do with this. I haven't looked deeply into the indices, but I can tell you that if we get rid of white space here, notice that, let's see here. There's all sorts of white space. So you notice how some of the yellow stuff went away. And I think that's what it is, but I'm not sure. Because white space is ignored normally, but on a DOM level, it's existent. So that's what these little text nodes are. I found it to be pretty interesting. I was playing around with that yesterday, actually. So yeah, I wonder if it's the white space pieces. But outside of that, I mean, I could look into it further, but I haven't gone crazy with that one. Crazy deep. Let's see. Amy said that she just did this. So she said she created an element. Yeah, I mean, Amy's is what I was looking for simplicity's sake. I just thought you create an element and you append the element. Looking back here, I do wonder so Cass, why do we need to do this? I wonder. Maybe just putting it on, removing child. Yeah, like removing a child, appending a child. I wonder if there was something weird there. Because I look at Amy's solution, I think that's what I would do, but it's complicated. I understand. So, oh, there we go. That's cool. Anyway, that's definitely out of scope of what I wanted to talk about, but I think that stuff's super fun to talk about. But I also know we have limited time. So all of that being understood, I want to make sure, are there any other questions besides random indices being returned? Because I don't know the exact answer, to be honest, on that one. But I love that we're talking about it. And I mean, that shows how far you guys have got. Okay. All right, let's move on to events and talk about what kind of things we can do with events. And Zhang says, shouldn't we use inner text instead of inner HTML? I would say yes, if you have multiple elements inside of it. You should definitely try to use inner text because inner HTML tries to delete everything. If you just do the text, it'll only delete the text or replace the text. So good comment there. All right, Domcat. So let's come over here and let's look at DOM 2. Michael. Yes, never-ending pop-ups. So let's talk about the document object model 2. At the end of this module, you should be able to explain what events are in the browser window, how event listeners can listen to those events, add event listeners and event handlers to elements, recognize event propagation, and the method to prevent it. So there is much more to events than we can cover in one day. Just to give you a little preview of how many events, look how many events there are and things you can change with events. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff your browser can do and or device. I'm not exaggerating. Like we couldn't even cover this probably, I mean, we could in a week, but we'd just be like writing events over and over. So just understand that events are a massive topic. And what I want to do is just cover this and skim the surface and give you enough to at least know how to go to where you want to go, and then let you explore. Similar to yesterday, where we talk about DOM manipulation, but ultimately you guys took it to another level. I expect the same thing today, where I'll introduce you to events, and you can take it as far as you want to take it. I'm also secretly excited to show you something that nobody's ever seen at Lambda School, and I'm just going to do it anyway because I can. But I'm going to show you one of my secret sauces of how I became very good at animations. And so I hope we can get to it. We'll see what happens. If not, I'll do a brown bag on it later or something. But so huge plug there for something fun in the future today. So let's look at how we can explain what events are in the browser and how event listeners can use these events. So ultimately, our window that we're looking at right now has the ability to listen to things. The whole document, object model, DOM, everything has the ability to listen to things. And so it's interesting because up until yesterday, you learned how to select elements, like actually get an element and then maybe change something in the element. But as you saw, it's not really useful outside of the page loading and the JavaScript automatically running. But in JavaScript, we don't want to do that usually, right? We want to control things before they come out so that we can say, okay, don't fire every event and that you see known to man. So let's start talking about how we can look at events. So I'm going to open up a little JS bin here, and I've got a simple content container that's inside of container that has an H1 of a product, some product info, and then a buy now button. Okay, so just try to keep it semi-realistic to something that we could do. I'm going to show you how we can add different events and how they work. So one of the first things you can do is actually right on the HTML, you can add an event. Because the DOM is always there. It's always in the browser, whether you use it or not. Because every time the page loads, remember, it's creating objects. And so one of the things we can do is actually put an on-click event. Now, I don't recommend doing this, but you need to know it exists. It's kind of like an inline style. And let's just put a dumb alert on there so we can see that it worked. Oh, wow, that autocomplete was wild. Yo. Okay. I don't know why it keeps deleting my... What's going on here? It doesn't like something I'm doing. Maybe I'll just use single quotes, see if that helps. JS bin's losing its mind. Okay, so if we run this thing and we click the button, so we see that we have an on click that triggered an event. And in this case, the event triggered was the click button. And so we used on click to trigger this alert. All right. So this is like in the olden times of the internet, this is how events were used. And JavaScript was very lightly used. It wasn't really powerful yet in what it could do. But people would put script tags inside. And people still do this, by the way. And so you can put a script tag inside here. And we could do a function. We could call a function. So we could say function. In this case, we'll just say hello. And we can pass some values into this function. Or we can just alert again because it's time. Hello. And then we can actually run the function. So we can actually come here and say hello. Click on the button. I don't know if I hit that run button. There we go. So say hello, hello. So now what we've done is we've gone out of our inline, like our inline thing, basically, and we went out and introduced ourselves to a function that existed in the script page. Now this is all well and dandy, but it's not necessarily abstracted, and it's kind of melded in with our code and kind of hard to see. And basically, it's kind of like an inline, right? It's with an important on it. It's going to own everything. So what we could do is we could actually abstract this out, put everything in our script tag, but then we have to get our element, right? And so in this case, if we tried to get our element, we have to get our document.element and we can put it in here, but then we could just use onClick and run our function. So we can come in here, assign the value of a function, say hello. We can get rid of our say hello because we can have an anonymous function now. And then of course we could get our button and oh wait, I gotta grab my button. So we could just say my button, assign the value of document dot, and then we could just get element by tag name or whatever we want. Or we could say query. And we can get our button. We can grab our custom button name. Oh, why does it keep doing that? Oh my gosh. All right, so we have our custom button, grab our button, on click, run it, click it. Let's see. Try and mess up my query selector. Oh, let. That should work. My button on click. Function, alert, hello. Well, that was working earlier. Not sure why it's not working. Let's see, what did I do wrong here? On click, da 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 da. Well, ultimately, I don't ever use this on click anymore. I'm going to use add event listener, which I'm about to show you anyway. But I'm not really sure why on click isn't working here. So yeah, sorry about that. Not sure why it's not working. But in this case, we don't do this stuff anyway anymore. We abstract this out into our JavaScript. So let me show you what that looks like. So basically, we could just grab our button up here, put it in our JavaScript. So I'm just going to say, see you later, script tag. Come over here. So we have my button. Now let's make sure everything's working. Now I'm nervous about it. So we'll say console.log my button.inner HTML. Okay. Let's go to our console, run it. And it's running. So by now it's coming in. All right, so I guess there was just something weird there. So now what we can do is the third way you can add an event listener. One is right on the item. The second way is to reference it with that on-click. It's just a DOM property. But the third way and the preferred way is definitely to use add event listener, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're actually going to add a listener to the button. So we're gonna say my button dot, and now we're going to say add event listener. And so add event listener allows us to, if we look at our training kit here, allows us to pass in an event and a callback. So remember callbacks from last week? So callbacks allow us to call a function on itself and pass in different parameters. So what we can do, if we come back here, and let's set up our listener here. So we can actually pass something in here. And in this case, we're going to pass in click, like we said. And then what we can do is we can pass in anonymous function, right? So we could just come in here and we can say, let me just grab, let me show you where I'm getting this, by the way. I'm not just coming up with this randomly. So if we go down to mouse events, so in our documentation here, notice I'm using click. That's where I'm getting that string. I just want to make sure you know I'm not just pulling it out of my hat. We can manipulate a ton of different events here, which I'm going to have you guys do shortly. Let's see. Oh, I didn't see if the C was needing to be capitalized. Nope. Anyway, let's just ignore that one for a little bit and focus on add event listener. Sorry. I thought it'd be fun to show you the 3 different ways, but that one did work for me earlier. Not sure what's going on. So in this case, with add event listener, we're going to pass in our callback function. So remember that here, let's just start over here and introduce an arrow function. And I'll talk about why we could do that. Basically, our arrow function is going to be passing in something to this, and we'll close off our function here. And we'll just say console.log, my button was clicked. Okay. And let's just console get this log out so we have only this. So let's review what we've done here. We've got my button referenced from the selector. I'm now using this new thing that you've never seen before, unless you looked at today's stuff, but add event listener. And what it does is it accepts an event, and then it can pass in a callback. And we're just going to, instead of writing a whole new function, we're just going to use an arrow function because we're not really concerned with the this keyword. So if we come into console, hit buy now, run my, maybe I didn't run my JavaScript before. Buy now, there we go. So my button was clicked. So in this case, we now have set up how every event ever works. Like this piece right here, my friends, can be used over and over with many different events. So if we look at these events, we could say double click. Let's go look at double click. Run with JavaScript. 1 click, nothing. 2 click, nothing. Double click, something. Isn't that cool? So double click, 1 click, 2 click, double click. I think that's pretty awesome. We can look at, basically, you could just got to read this documentation. It's in the training kit under extended resource learnings, but here we go. There's that link. This link is the Bible today of what you're going to do, the dictionary, whatever you want, whatever the most important book is for you right now, that's this thing for today, because it's going to give you access to all of these events. So because we're using mouse events, we can say mouse over, for example, and we can replace this with mouse over. My button was moused over. Run it. Mouse over the button. Mouse over the button. Isn't that cool? We're actually manipulating the DOM with events now. This is super powerful. But we can do this with many different things. Like we could do it with the window, for example. So in this case, and by the way, a lot of people use the window for a lot of things. Let's write out something. So with the window object, we can just access it like this because it doesn't need a selector because it's always available to the DOM. And we're going to say add event listener. Oh my gosh, I'm going to make sure I copy and paste so I don't mess up spelling. And then let's go look at some, well, let me just basically build this out. So we'll come in here. Oh my goodness. I'll just borrow this. Why do I keep trying to be smart with this? Just don't be smart. Copy and paste. So we'll come in here and let's go look at what the window can do. So let's say window events. And then down here we could do, that's not what I'm looking for. We can come up here and look at like the resize. Oh, it's called a view event, my bad. But in this case, notice that we don't have to type in view event view or view event resize. We can just call it right from the beginning what we want. So we want resize. So every time the window is resized, we'll say resized. So now let's run it. Make sure our button's working. Now I'm going to resize the window. Wow, that's a lot of events. Pretty cool, huh? So what we can do with this is we can apply these things to functions that are listening for these events, right? So in this case, we have a console log, and we're just saying resize. But what if you wanted to change different positioning based on what you could see? Or let's say you wanted to change something with this buy now button, right? Well, that's what the beautiful thing is about this, is that we could either call a function here or run a function here. So if we wanted to do something else, we could run a totally different function, right? We could be explicit and say, my function custom event. And then we could just, man, I am so bad at typing today. Sorry, guys. And then we'll just say console.log my custom event. And then what we can do is we can just call this thing right from like a mouse hover, right? Because now we've captured it. We've captured the event and we can do something with it. So if we run this, clear it, see how my custom event's getting called? It's this function, right? All right, this is pretty cool. Hopefully you guys are going, whoa, this is awesome. Because under the hood, there's like hundreds of events, it seems like. I don't know exactly how many events there are, but I'm willing to bet there's at least over 100. And within these events, you can do many, many different things depending on the objects that you're trying to manipulate. So like drag and drop, mouse events, keyboard events. Keyboard events are really interesting because keyboards have different unique identifiers per key. And so as you go into the events, you can learn about their properties, and then you can learn about how to manipulate them. So that's pretty cool. What I want to show you is, well, let's see. I kind of want you guys to play with this at this point because I hate introducing something and then you don't get to touch it. So let's basically, let me give you this. What I would like you to do is 1048. Let's do this. I want to break up, and we're going to do breakout groups. I don't think we've ever done that here. So what I want to do is for the next, let's say 10 minutes, I want to like really break out into this. I want you guys to go play around with a ton of events in groups. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break out everybody in the Zoom meeting, and I'm going to have you guys look at this, and I want you to just go play around with all these different events and just do it as a team and talk about all these different events and see how it looks, because I just really want you to try this. It's really cool. So here's that link. So given that link, now I'm going to break everybody up into groups. Now what's going to happen is all these little breakout rooms will pop out, and it's just, it'll randomly assign you. So I'm going to basically start a 10-minute timer. I'll share my screen on that timer. Okay, so let me break out into rooms. And I want you guys to look at what's going on with all these events. Go try to do a ton of different events and talk to each other about them, given the code I provided. All right, let me break it out now. If you are in a room with like 3 project managers, I can rearrange things. So just understand that. I'm just going to break it out. So there's going to be 14 rooms. Holy cow. All right, here we go. Welcome back. The timer's running down here, so all the rooms will be closed in 30-something seconds. All right. Let me share my screen again. By the way, I was bothered by not knowing the on-click, and I solved it. So annoying. So I went and looked at what I did wrong. And I did some dum-dums, and I'll talk about those. And they're very unique to the situation. Okay. So number one, notice my script tag is below everything else. Oh, wait, let's see. Everybody's not in here yet. I should have shut down the rooms. We'll wait. Here they come. It's going to make everything lag for a second. Oh, man. Wheel of Death is spinning hard. Come on. Don't die. Okay, everybody's coming back. All right, we got 56 in here. We started with 60, so we lost a couple in the war. We'll see what happens. Okay, 57. All right. So welcome back, you guys. That was fun, right? Breakout rooms. I think they're super fun. I want to try to use them more, and I know that Ryan and other future instructors will as well. But I really wanted you just to kind of play with events. Before I get to some examples, so I'm going to go ahead and show me some examples of what you came up with here. Go ahead, and in this thread, if you'd like to show us what your group came up with, examples here. Don't do code. Give me JS bin links. Sorry, Ari. I tried to add you to a group, so I wonder if that was your internet. So give me JS bin links in that thread. Don't give me code, please, just because we want to see it. All right. So while you guys go put in some links there, we'll go look at them. I want to show you what I did with the on-click thing here. So button, I had to reference the ID. So that was my first problem. Had to use ID. And that's because the DOM actually knows what the ID is when we're using its built-in method. This is pretty archaic, just so you know. Don't use it very often. But what it does is it allows us to access the button's ID. Then we can just put in our alert, but notice that my script tag is below my button. That is because the DOM doesn't know about the button if the script tag's up here. So I was shooting myself in the foot twice. So if I run this, hit buy now, we get our what alert. So if I put this script tag above, run with JS, reference error, button's not defined, it freaks out trying to find the button. So my friends, now we know the problem. It's not JS bin, it was just me forgetting some vital important pieces because I just don't use it very often. I use add event listener exclusively. And of course, the built-in methods of other frameworks. Okay, let's see with what some of you guys came up with. So Zach puts a link in. I clicked it. Let's see if it comes up. There we go. All right, so let's identify what we've done here. So in this case, we got the same button that we grabbed. We're doing a mouse over, custom event, log the event, sweet. So, now we have a key event. Okay, so key down. And if you key down, const name event.key. Okay, cool. So let's see if it can get my keys. So I'm going to type. Oops. Let's run it with JS first. There we go. F. So What up? This is awesome. Nice. That's really cool. Very cool. I like that implementation. So it's registering all my key event names. That's awesome. We're going to talk about the event object very shortly here. So good job, Zach and team, if there was a team behind it. Okay, Cigar. If I'm saying your name wrong, I apologize. Okay, let's see. This looks like my code. Did I mess up some? Did you mess up a link there on accident? This looks like the code I was just doing. So maybe try another link. Anybody else got a link? I only see one link in there. You guys just did 10 minutes of this. You guys nervous about your links or something? Give me a couple links in that thread, please. Unless you guys... You were supposed to try these things, not just read them. Just throw them in there. Oh my goodness, you guys. Okay, that's kind of funny. I thought 10 minutes would be great. You need more time? All right, you know what? Oh, wow, overwhelming. Okay, this is good stuff. This is good stuff for me to see. I'm not mocking you. I'm just like, wow, okay, this is... I thought I gave you everything you needed. So what I gave you was the events to do certain things. I gave you the reference, and then I was just showing you that you could copy and paste, like if you went to the mouse events. So yeah, let's see, different events. Okay, cool. Well, tell you what, let's take a 5-minute break because it's been a good while. When we come back, do you guys want to try to do events again with the way I originally thought? Do you want to try it again with everybody? I guess some of you already did it. Okay, we'll try it again, but let's do 5 minutes because that's good. It sounds like you guys had a good exercise there learning about events. Let's do a 5-minute break though, just to get away from the keyboard for a second. So go to the bathroom, take a water break, whatever. So 5 minutes, timer, reset. And then let me share the screen to the timer so we have reference. Share screen. There we go. So go ahead and take a break, you guys, and we'll come back, talk about the event object, and then I'll send you on your way again. All right. Welcome back from the break a little bit there. I know 5 minutes doesn't seem like a lot when you're digesting a ton of information, but it really does go a long way in helping step away for just a little bit. Okay. So let's try this again. Let me review again. So the whole point of what I wanted you guys to do was given, like, don't recreate the wheel here. Given the selection, so for example, up here, I'm going to uncomment this. Comment this stuff out since it was just kind of for me. Oh, this is my, what the? Am I copying my own stuff? I am. Okay. So I'm going to go over here, comment it out, bring in my selector. So remember, guys, this is from yesterday. We grabbed our button. Ba-boom. Here's our button. So we now have access to this button, right? Like, you don't need to do that. I don't want you to worry about that. I did it for you. The whole point of this exercise was to assign an event listener right here. I'm going to get rid of everything else. I don't want any confusion. And then you do something here, right? Do something. And that could be like console log. You know, like, we got into this event. So for example, if I wanted a console log, we got into this event on mouse over, I have to hit the run with JS button. This is definitely one of the weird things about using an online tool like this. You got to hit run with JS every time you do something new. Otherwise, you're going to go crazy. Then as I hover over the buy now button, see, we got into this event. Boom. That's all I really wanted you to do, was to go and change this value based on this event reference I gave you. So let's try this again. Here's the event reference. Given that event reference, go play around with a couple events that you think look exciting, like try mouse leave, mouse out. And then what you can do is copy and paste a couple of these event listeners, right? So you could say, my button, click, do something else. So like we came in here, click occurred, right? So we run it. So if we hover over it and then click, we get two different events. Kind of cool. So that's what I was hoping to get out of our group projects here. Not group projects, but also, I know some of you are a little stressed out working in groups for the first time like this. I know that you have pair programming in the afternoon, so you're at least used to doing that. But these breakout rooms are really helpful in just communicating with each other. If you're shy, believe it or not, I'm pretty shy. I don't like to go out in public and be like, hey, everybody, you know. And sometimes it's kind of hard to get up here every day and speak. But I understand, I empathize with you. I'm not asking you to be instructors. I'm asking you to just participate and maybe just listen to somebody that's got a stronger voice. That's fine. So what I'll do is we'll break into breakout groups again. And now, given the instruction I've just given you, I will comment this out for you. And now what I'm going to do is take this link, paste it in here. Now, can someone please verify that this link has everything I just said? I wonder if I maybe gave you a link that was dead last time, content-wise. Can someone please verify that this link is indeed working? Thank you. Okay, so now what I want you to do is open this up and just play around with these events. Don't try to like read beyond mouse enter, a point device, but just read that. Don't go crazy and try to figure out how everything works. Just go in here, get mouse enter, copy and paste it, put it in, and see what happens. Okay? When I give you the link with the breakout rooms, hit the accept button or whatever pops up. It'll automatically put you in random groups. And we'll do this again for 10 minutes because I really, really want you guys to experience what it feels like to individually put these events. So everybody click this link right now, everybody. Get your own JS bin up. Okay. And then I want you to discuss with your group the different events that you could use, and then maybe pick one person to be the liaison to provide me a JSBin link at the end of the 10 minutes. Okay, so 10 minutes should be plenty of time to copy and paste a couple of these in and see what happens. Okay, all right, hopefully that's way clearer. Sorry if it was not before, it's my bad. So I'm gonna put in here a 10-minute timer. I'll stop the group a minute before it ends because it takes a minute to shut down all the groups. So let's try it again. Breakout sessions. And by the way, this is totally applicable to your assignment. It's not a waste of time. This is very, very important for you guys to work on these events. Okay, here we go. Breakout rooms. Let's see, not started. And okay. Open all rooms. Okay, you should be getting prompts to go to your room. What do you think? Oh shoot, I didn't start the timer. Let's bump it down to 8. And well, we'll just keep it 10. Everybody get in their groups. Let's see. Aaron, Shinobo, you guys need to get into a group. Unless you stepped away from computer or something. Thank you. Okay. Obo, you need to get into a group, my friend. All right. What do you think, Cole, Drishan? I think this is pretty good for them to go through. I guess I can unmute you guys so we can talk. There you go, Cole. You're unmuted. And Drishan.
I was just about to say, right before you asked, I would tell you this is wonderful. My students are loving it. As far as being able to explore, they really just want to explore JavaScript and all that stuff. So giving them a chance to do that is what they wanted for real.
That's perfect. That's exactly what I'm hoping for. Hey, Kelly, do you need to get into a group? Oh, there she goes. Or he. I don't know. Kelly is tough for me sometimes to know which one. Person. No, I just feel like in the past this has been delivered in such a strange way. And so I think it's so great to have opportunity here. It's great. Everybody's doing so great. Well, I'm going to go get a drink of water, so I'll be right back.
Yeah, I'm about to fix some food.
All right, we've got about 20 seconds before everybody will get back in here. So I'll just wait those 20 seconds. All right, everybody should be popping back in here shortly. Okay, it looks like everybody's back. All right. Let's look at. Okay, here we go. Here's a bunch of links. Good. All right, I'm going to click on some of these links. Let's check out. Oops. I did not open in the right browser. Right there. There we go. All right, let's check this link out. We've got Marco sent this in. So custom button on mouse over. We got into this event. Okay, so we added a scroll. Window.event on the scroll. Okay. So if we can scroll, problem is I have to make my screen small enough to scroll, but it would work. I know it would. I don't want to mess with the window though too much. So what we could do is we could just say resize, and it should work the same way. So if I resize my window, there we go. Nicely done, Marco. That's exactly what I was looking for. Let's see, Brandon. Oh, look at this. So we've got ourselves 2 selectors, P tag and a button. We got some, let's see over here. Oh, wait a second. Yeah, here we go. So hello. Put something in. Let's see, what am I looking at here? Add event listener to the P tag, select function. This is working in the log. I have to run the code first, I think. There we go. We got an event on key up. So it should alert. Let's see here. This dot value dot match Josh GI alert. This is awesome. So maybe I'm missing something here. Brandon, sorry about that if I didn't do it correctly, but key up function, and then we're using the this keyword. And the this keyword is referencing whatever element this keyword is on. So in this case, it should be whatever I'm typing. In this case, I'm hitting the D key. So I don't know, maybe I messed up on that. Sorry, Brandon. All right, let's keep going down the list. Nice. John. Gene, is it Gene or Jean? Team Diego, Ronald, Danny, and Gene. Jean. Okay. So looking here, we've got our document selector and window, add event listener, context menu. You can't steal this, sucker. All right, so let's look at what context menu does. I've actually never seen that or played with it. Context menu, the right button on the mouse click is, oh, there, look at that. The right button on the mouse is clicked. So if we go look at it and right click, I'll run the JavaScript, right click. You can't steal this, sucker? That's cool. That's awesome, guys. All right, let's see. Cass. All right. Document selector, blah, 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 blah. Add event listener. Okay. Window, full screen. Well, I can't do that because my screen will bust, but scrolling I can do. Let me run this. You are scrolling, you are scrolling. And then on the button, where's the button? There we go. We got our mouse over. Perfect. Very cool. Let's see. Edward says, copy the paragraph to the clipboard and paste the result. Okay. I'll try to do the things he said. So let's see. Copy the paragraph to the clipboard and paste the result. Like copy this. Okay, then paste. Maybe I didn't run it right. Let me try it again. Paste. Copy the paragraph to the clipboard and paste the result. I think I'm doing that right. Sorry, Edward. Let's see. Amy. We can't go through all of them, but man, I'm impressed. This is exactly what I was looking for before. So I learned that I did not give good enough instructions, which is great for me to learn. So in this case, we got add event listener on a mouse over, do something. Okay. Let's see. Input test. What's going on here? Maybe I got half-baked code from you. Because if I try to run it without doing anything, I get a syntax error. Sorry, Amy. Alex, what do we got here? We've got a wheel event. All right, cool. Wheeling and dealing. Nice. That's cool. Custom event talking to me. And the custom event gets called from the wheel or the mouse over. So if I clear this, talking to me, very cool. Very cool. Okay. Sorry, you guys are all giving me instructions. Okay, let me go back to the Brandon one. I'm sorry, guys. This is super fun. Like, I love this. You guys are writing code that you could not write before, and this is so cool. Okay, so I'm going to come back to my HTML. I'm going to type in, I'm going to run my JavaScript first, like a good boy. And I'm going to say, Josh, aha, there we go. Trying to get brownie points, I see. Well, it worked. Good job. Very good job. That makes a lot more sense. That's cool. So it was looking to match Josh. That's really cool. Let's see here. Awesome. Okay, you guys, seriously, I'm like so proud of you. This is so great. Even, I mean, I don't know. This is just seeing you guys progress so quickly is just satisfying. So as we look at some other things, I want to show you another thing that we can do to manipulate it. Because like this stuff's fun, and I want us to have fun. Console logging is fun. But to get things to be useful, we have to be able to manipulate a couple of new things in combination with yesterday. So over here, while you guys were on break, I wrote this out. But basically, not on break, on breakouts. In this piece right here, I had an event listener called click. And click was going to add a class to the heading. So right here, I have an H1. I called it my heading. And it's selecting the H1. In my CSS, I created a class called Mega that makes the font size 100px and changes the color to red. So watch this. If I run my JS and I hit the Buy Now button, Mega gets popped in here. And so what happened is you'll notice over here that nothing changed, and that's because, remember, this isn't the DOM. This isn't the DOM. The DOM is under the hood. And so if I were to inspect this element, we could now see that Mega got applied. Notice that it added a class and not an inline style. We actually used a class there. And the way we could do that was with class list. Now, this was in the documentation from yesterday. I don't think we covered it very much at all. But go read about class list, and you can do some crazy cool stuff with it. And you can remove classes as well. So look, I have a double click right here. And if I double click by now, so double click, it goes back to normal because I removed the mega class. This is way more, I don't know, real life than just a console log, because now you're manipulating the DOM, changing objects, adding classes. So you could now think, wow, you can do a lot of stuff. Like we could do display flexbox or reverse row or something with a click of a button. So we could say like, you know, get out. And in this case, we could say display none, right? And then we could actually toggle display none this thing out and toggle it out. So we could actually say get out, right? Notice the syntax here, because it knows it's a class list no matter what, that I don't have to do dot. I can just say get out. So now if I run my JavaScript and hit buy now, it removes the object. Okay? Now that it's gone, double click, can't even get to it. So be careful. You are actually manipulating the DOM and removing elements from the DOM. So be very careful with this sometimes. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Notice that if I change this back to mega, so we got mega over here. If I tried to run this with the same event, they will cancel each other out because click tries to run and click tries to run. So you have to be careful about what events are on what items. Okay, so in this case, if I hit buy now, sorry, I have to run my JavaScript, it just cancels itself out no matter what I do, because this is trying to run and this is trying to run. So that's why I had to use double click to get this thing to work. Okay, so that's why double click. So make sure that when you're using your events today, that you keep track of your events, or you're going to have that kind of problem. Okay, so I just wanted to show this to you. And now that you guys have played around with this stuff a little bit, we're ready for a little bit more advanced thing. But I think, let's see, we probably need to take, let's see, we got a couple minutes. Do you guys want to take a 5-minute break just to get some water and potty break, or do you want to keep going to the end of the hour? What's the consensus here? I don't know what nays means. So keep going. Keep going. Okay, let's keep going. Sweet. I want to make sure I ask. All right, so Amy says, could you get click to replace the button with a different button and then use click to get the original button back so you could toggle it back and forth? You totally could, and you should try that on your own. So what I want to introduce you to is event propagation, okay? Because when we start messing around with HTML elements, some of them come pre-built with their own propagation. So if we come down here, we've learned now what events do. We've learned how to add listeners and to handle those listeners. Now we need to understand how to recognize event propagation and the method to prevent it. So spoiler alert, it's called prevent default. And we can talk about stop propagation as well. But so what I mean by this is that sometimes we'll have like a button, by the way, doesn't do much by itself, right? It just sits there. So if we didn't have any of this JavaScript in here, just no JavaScript at all, this button is pretty harmless. It doesn't do anything. But oftentimes we will have, instead of a button, we will have an A tag. So let's just introduce a new element so we can keep the old one. A tag, and this would actually go and refresh the page and say, I am an anchor. So the problem is a lot of times people want to put an event on an element that does something naturally by itself. Okay, and so the default behavior of this is to refresh the page. So if I click this, well, it's stopping this thing. So let's do ESPN.com. Go grab this. And we'll go to our, oops, go to this A tag. Let's see. Okay, so it's trying to go to ESPN.com. So let's see here. We'll come back. Okay, there we go. So we know that if we click that, it'll jump to ESPN.com. This behavior is not always desirable, and we want to be able to prevent its normal behavior. And so we can actually do that. We can intercept the event before it gets there. And let's look at how that can work. So in this case, I'm going to have to select it, right? So let over here. Because of just getting it really quickly, I'm just going to grab the A tag itself, my anchor. Okay, so at this point, I've got my A tag. It's got a thing inside of it. It's passing the value to ESPN.com, as we saw if we click on it. So what we can do now is we can actually add an event listener to it, and just like this one. So I'm going to grab this, my anchor, uncomment it. So all I've done is just popped in my anchor, add an event listener. I'm going to do something with it. So what we can do now is we can actually use what's called the event object. And so let me talk about this for a second. If we come back to our event object, I want to talk about, sorry, I want to make sure I don't, I'm wondering if, I don't know if I want to talk about prevent default right this second. Let's just do it. So the prevent default will allow us to pass in an event, take what the event normally does, and stop doing whatever it normally does. So in this parameter here, it automatically passes an event if we reference the parameter. So this is really interesting. So if we do add event listener, MDM, so you'll notice here that we pass in the type of event, right? And then we can actually have options. And these options allow us to see what kind of events can be passed in here. So if we come in here, we can actually see all the information that this event comes with it. So let's not look at anchor just for a second. I want to talk about the event object by itself, and then we'll come back to it. So give me a second here. So we'll come back to my button. We'll bring it back in. So now we've just got my button again. Remember, if we run JavaScript, let's see. My button at event listener, click, do something. My heading, oh yeah, so we don't need to worry about that. All right, so we should be seeing a console log when we hit the button. There we go, there's our button. Let's give ourselves some more JavaScript room here. So now what we can do is we can actually look at our event that's passed in, and let's go see what this looks like. So we'll come into our console log, and we'll say, let's log the event object that gets passed through here. So let's clear it, run it, push go. Woo, this is a big object. Look how, I mean, this is massive. Whoa. And so what's happening is it's passing us a bunch of information. And this information can be overwhelming because look how much information, right? But really, we just have to understand a couple really important things about this. So the event allows us to access something like a type or a target. And so let me do this. We can just do event.type. Let's see what happens. So clear it, run it, by now. And so it tells us what kind of event, right? Like it's got all this information that we passed in. If we were to change the event to a mouse over, it would tell us that it's a mouse over. That's cool. So there's some read-only properties with event. It's pretty cool. Let's go look at a thing called current target. Okay. So I'm going to clear this, run it, hit the buy now button. So the current target is the element itself. It's grabbing all the information on the element that we have. And so current target really allows us to understand the this keyword in reference to what's being clicked. So we are clicking the button, right? Up here with our query selector. So my button is referencing this custom button class, and that is the current target of what we are clicking based on the event object. So what's interesting here, let's see, I really want to show you guys. There was a link I really wanted you to look at. It's really good. Okay, here it is. So I'm going to give you this link right there. And we're going to be talking about the event target, bubbling, and propagation. I really like this thing by SitePoint. So let me get that. Everybody go click that, get it up. I'll look at it with me. And so what we can do is we can actually discover what some of this event object does for us and why it works. So basically, when an event happens, the browser creates an event object like every time, no matter what. And what happens is we can actually get this object and we can figure out what it does, and it has tons of properties like we talked about. These properties are allowing us in this tiny window like we've just talked about to read and update. But it's just like, I don't know, when I see this stuff, I get overwhelmed. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But really, you just have to understand that it's all part of how the browser renders and reads events and how it can use these events to do different things. Okay, so just get that in your head. Like, that's all we're doing. So let's get rid of event.currentTarget and just take it back to type really quick. Let's see. We click. Okay, so now we got our click. So just so you know, that's where we are. Now, with that said, I want to bring over that link I just gave you guys and talk about how these events actually work. This stuff is definitely more advanced than what we've been talking about, so bear with me. I'm going to walk you through this. You could read it on your own and get it, but I want to give you some guidance here. So let's talk about what the heck is event propagation. So in this case, we're using the events to control, let me go down here, the event phases. So I've got this up here, this event dispatch. This is right from the W3 documentation. Just so you know, look at this scroll bar. Look how much goes into this stuff. This is just crazy. It's overwhelming. But I want you just to focus it on this. It's really going to help us understand how events work. So there's 3 phases, and that we're going to get back to the article I linked you. But these 3 phases of capturing an event, targeting an event, and then the bubbling of an event, these really are the last things that we need to discuss about events. So when you create an event, the way it gets assigned, so you know how we say add event listener? Right there. That has to be propagated or moved through and assigned through the DOM tree, right? So we have the window object, which is our window. We have the document object, which is created every time a browser or window is made. And then we start getting our nodes, right? And our nodes we know are just elements that are on the page. So HTML, body, table, table body, table row, and then we have our table content here. So they're just using a table as an example here. But given this example, phase 1 is putting this thing down here so that all these other things know that this has an event on it. Phase 2 of the target propagation, and this is called event dispatching. Phase 2 is basically that current target thing we just looked at. So it's the actual event. It's the piece that has the target on it. And then phase 3, and this is the new thing that you guys have never experienced yet, or if you have, we'll talk about it, is bubbling. So whether you knew it or not, every time you run an event, so all the way down here, we get to our element, and then we call it. Let's say we do click event, all right? This thing climbs up the ladder and hits every element all the way back up to the window. This is actually a pretty cool feature once you get the hang of it. But if you don't know what it's doing, it could be kind of crazy. So what I mean by that is, let's go look at an example. So in this code, we've got some nested elements, right? We have container, we have content. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a new query selector. And we're just going to say, my content. And it's going to be assign the value of my class called content, right? Nothing new here. And then let's get the other thing up here. My container. And then we're going to get the content, or the container class, I should say. Okay, so what's interesting here is that now that we have these things selected, we can add event listeners to all of them. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab my button event listener. And I'm going to say my container, my content, and of course we have our button. So what's interesting to note is that over here we have click. So what we'll do is we'll log and we'll just say, I am container. I am content. And then we'll just log this out and say, oops, I am button. Let me get rid of all this extra fluff here. Okay, so according to bubbling, and what the browser always does, no matter what with a DOM, is that when we fire an event, it will bubble up to the other elements that have that same event. And so let's see what happens here. So we're going to hit clear, run with JavaScript. And I'm only going to hit buy now. Look at that. It fired I am content, I am button, and I am container in that order, right? So button went first, then content, then container. It followed this bubbling phase. So what's happening here, and this is just a quirk of the document object model, but if you think about it, this is actually pretty powerful because then you could put listeners on the way up and do different things where you normally wouldn't do. So you could come in here and say, on a button click inside of myself, then we could do the add class mega or something. So we could say, wherever we had it, my heading. And then up here on like the content section, we could say my heading, class list, add mega. So clear it, run it, and see how it kicks in. Even though we didn't click specifically content, we specifically clicked button. Because button is nested inside of content, it bubbles up. Okay? So the nested content will bubble up. And this is called propagation. Like that's the word we use to describe this bubbling behavior. But bubbling, by the way, is not just a funny word to describe it bubbling up. It actually is something that we can check and use the property called bubbles. And it can return a Boolean of true or false. So why is this important to you? Well, you need to know that these events are bubbling up because if you wanted to have multiple click events, and let's say you didn't want something to happen in a certain order, then you have to be able to control that bubbling. And to control that bubbling, we need to be able to stop something that's going on with that bubbling. So to stop bubbling, we can actually do event stop propagation. Okay, so when we stop propagation, it allows us to actually stop the thing from happening. So if we were to come in here and we have our event object right here on our content, we could say event dot stop. I don't want to misspell it. Stop propagation. Now, the interesting thing about stop propagation is it will run the current event But then, so let's watch this thing. It should say I'm content, but we should not see I am a container if it all worked out. Sweet, so it worked. So in this case, you'll see I am a container did not get called. It's not there. But it did run this one thing. That can be super annoying too if you want to control it completely. So guess what? There's a method for that. It's called event.stop immediate propagation. So if we do that, this will stop it immediately instead of letting it run. So let's run it, hit the button. Let's see. So it does stop the propagation, but maybe it gets into this event. I wonder if we need to put it up here. Okay, so it's stopping the propagation at the click. But I thought it should have stopped that, but that is the two stop propagation pieces that stop the bubbling that go up. This is a really, really important thing to understand just under the hood that it's happening. But up until this point, I think we were like adding events, kind of having a fun time messing around with functions. And now it's like, wait a second, this is kind of crazy. Why do we have to know about this? And it's mostly just because this happens no matter what, whether you like it or not. Like it's happening under the hood. These phases are happening. And so to understand how to manipulate these phases is important. But I can tell you right now that for most things, like even today's assignment, you don't even need to worry about this unless you want to. Meaning it's kind of extra credit to even want to use stop propagation in this case, because it's not going to impact a lot of the things that you're doing unless you have 400 click events on the same nested object. But in this case, I've never really done this in the real world where I've put 3 click events that are nested inside of one element. But you could actually do it if you wanted to and control the propagation of how far the thing gets up. So just keep that in the back of your minds. Let's say maybe you have a menu system with like 3 buttons and one thing. You could use stop propagation there to stop the menus from being clickable by other things. And that's really how I would use it. So that's how you stop the bubbling propagation. Okay. So that is one thing that we need to understand. And the last thing before I let you go is the prevent default. So let's go look at what I mean by that. So let's just do prevent default MDN. I just want to show you how I always search for everything. So really what we do is we grab the event and we prevent the default. So what this does is toggling in this example. Let me just read it to you. It tells the user agent that if the event does not explicitly get handled, its default action should not be taken as it normally would be. So this is what I was getting at with the A tag, and then we took a little left turn there. But in this case, we're going to grab the event, and then we're going to run this method prevent default. So back to the A tag. So we'll go back to my anchor, bring this back in here. And so this anchor, by the way, is inside of all this stuff, so all this stuff will fire too. But what we can do is we can say event dot, and then what was it again? Prevent default, right? Or where is it? Right there. So all we got to do is just type this method in, and it doesn't have any parameters, doesn't return a value, it just stops it. So we can prevent default, clear this, run it. Now watch what happens if I click I'm an anchor. It doesn't go to ESPN.com anymore. Pretty cool. Also notice that because of the event bubbling, everything got fired, right? Because it's all inside here. If I were to take this A tag out and put it outside the div, so it's no longer nested, clear this, run it, nothing happens. Pretty cool, right? So now if I take out my ESPN, or if I take off my event prevent default, clear, run, click, now it goes to ESPN because its default action is to do that. Whoops, trying to refresh the page so I can get back to this. So you can see the power of prevent default against normal element behavior. But really, when am I using this? Probably only the A tag and some other like fields that I want to control. Maybe I don't want focus to be put on an input or something. So you could prevent default on input or something. But it's basically used to prevent normal behavior of HTML elements. It is unrelated to propagation. It's just an extra thing I wanted to talk about. But when it comes to propagation and the bubble, you have to understand that you can control how much or how little something bubbles by using the propagation. All right. One of the last things, this is the last thing, is that this is just a passer of a value that's default. So I could call this E. I could call it D. I could call it whatever I want. And as long as I'm consistent, so you're going to see a lot of developers use the word or the letter E to represent the event. This has become very common practice. So if you see code, undoubtedly you will see the E being passed in as the event object. And then you can play around with it. Okay. So events are kind of crazy. Like there's a ton of stuff going on. I think what I want you to focus on is just learning how to pass in and add an event listener. And by the way, if you add a ton of event listeners, they don't go away. So you can also remove event listeners and save some memory. But that's just something you could read about later. I just want you to focus on adding event listeners to objects and getting them to actually fire and work. So today, for your assignment, this was, let's see, DOM 2. So this one's super, super wide open. Basically, given the web docs, I want you to create custom events to manipulate the DOM. So use yesterday's project as your base for today's project. If you did not get done with yesterday's project, don't worry. You can go and grab something from anytime that the Great Idea page was used. You can update the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript for this project. So you have full reign over what you want to do now. But yesterday, if you've already got done with it, I want you to keep it and just keep building off of it. I want you to create 10 unique event listeners. Okay, so that means 10 different types. So mouse click would be one, double click would be another. Like that's 2, but you have to come up with 10 that you use in your assignment. I just want you to go crazy and have kind of a fun time, I think, just going through and updating the DOM in creative ways. So I'm going to give you this stuff right here, and you can use this as an example of what you could do. So you could, maybe manipulate some classes, add and remove classes with buttons. For the stretch goal, I didn't get to do this. I'm like so sad about it. Green sock, animation platform. This is so sad for me. Do you guys want me to should we just do this after lunch just for fun? Okay. That's one from let me do a poll. Okay, I think everybody likes. We'll just do it. I'll just do it after lunch. So after lunch, I'm going to show you how to really up your game in crazy ways with animation using everything we've learned today, plus GreenSock. And this is part of the stretch, is go look at GreenSock and implement animations found in the library with your custom events. So guys, custom events is what I want you to look at. Adding event listeners, 10 unique listeners. If you get done with that, you could spend all afternoon and tomorrow doing this. It's so much fun, I think, to manipulate the DOM. But if you're kind of sick of it and you got your 10 in, there's a stretch assignment I want you to take a look at. And this assignment basically, given HTML and CSS provided to you, basically you have to say when a block is clicked, it should go to the top of the stack. If you don't know what that means, that's called an event stack. This is a stretch assignment, so don't worry about it if you don't get to it. But if you're looking at it, there's only 2 lines of instruction, and it's while a mouse is clicked down on a box, it should move to the right. So these things are something you can do if you get through everything that I've already talked about. But I would recommend that you just stay here and have fun with some of the things I'm going to show you after lunch. All right, we already went over 11 minutes here, so we'll just start 10 minutes after lunch hour, so you get a full hour. I want you guys to really get a break. After that, if you're interested, please come. I'll record it if you're not interested, and I'll put it up there, but I'll probably spend half an hour going over GreenSock, and it's just amazing. Okay, guys, go to lunch, and then I'll open up a Zoom in channel, and I'll get this up on YouTube. Thanks.